Hello everyone, welcome back. And today's video got another news and rumor video to discuss. And today's we're looking at some signings that happened from our past couple of days, plus some trade rumors involving the Predators, Canucks, Bruins, Islanders, and a couple of other teams. So to all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Nintendo Hockey Channel. Before I get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and don't leave a comment down in the comment section below so you can also in this video. Now, as usual, we're going to start today's video off by looking at some signings from our past couple of days. We've had 3 from over the past handful of days since I've done a video, so interesting stuff there. First, we saw St. Louis Blues send one of their young prospects to an ELC, and that was Quinton Burns. Burns, who gets a 3-year deal with the AV of $870,000, the former 3rd-round pick, 74th overall in the 2023 draft. Gets a solid ELC in my opinion, coming off a season where he had 6 goals and 35 points, a career high in 58 OHL games. Looks like a very fantastic, more offensive defenseman. Not as good as some of these other offensive defensemen, but could I think eventually be a solid 3rd, maybe 2nd pair defenseman in St. Louis and put up some points. So that was a pretty good pickup there for St. Louis Blues to sign Burns to a 3-year ELC. Now, we talked about this trade a little while ago. I'll link it up in the YouTube cards. Askarov was dealt to the San Jose Sharks. It was an interesting deal, but after being traded, he has signed an extension. Askarov, entering the final year of his deal right now, signed a 2-year extension with an AV of $2 million. That'll be at the start of next year. So Askarov will be under contract now for the next 3 seasons for the Sharks. That's pretty good for them. Askarov coming off a season where he had 2.39 GAA and 911 save percentage in 44 AHL games. Also gone to 2 NHL games, putting up a 943 save percentage and 1.47 GAA. Small sample size of the NHL, but he's looked good in the games he's been in, so it's going to be interesting to see exactly how he fares in San Jose. Could he be a starter this year? Could he be a backup? We'll have to start in the AHL. If he does get into NHL action, what sort of a record could he put up? The Sharks are still a relatively bad team, so interesting stuff there, but the Sharks have signed Askarov after acquiring him to a 2-year, $2 million extension. That'll be at the start of next year. That should be able to get him the starting role over the next couple of years, so interesting stuff there. And lastly, we saw the LA Kings send Erik Portillo, who was one of their RFAs, sent a 3-year ELC with an AV of $783,000. So that's a pretty good deal in my opinion for the Kings. Portillo was acquired from Buffalo a couple of years back at the deadline. Buffalo had Levi, they had Luukkonen, they had Portillo, 3 really good goaltenders. Not all 3 are going to be able to make it to the NHL level, so they decided to move on from Portillo, moved into LA for a 3rd-round pick. It was a nice ad there for the Kings to get a goaltender who might eventually be able to be their starter. Portillo's looked all right over the past couple of years. A few years ago, he was playing in the NCAA, put up a 3 GAA and a 908 save percentage in 38 games. Looked pretty good. This past year, playing 39 AHL games, his first pro season, and actually looked even better, putting up a 918 save percentage and a 2.5 GAA. Now, I don't expect him to make the team this year. I expect there to be Copley or Riddick as the backup with Kemper the starter, but Kemper's only under contract for, I think, 2 more seasons after this year. Copley and Riddick, I think, are both on 1-year deals, so there's a very likely chance that Portillo has another strong season at the AHL level. There's a possibility out there, I think, that Portillo could wind up making the team as early as next year, so it's an interesting signing. 3 years at near league minimum is pretty good for the Kings, and I think their future starting goaltender is locked up in their system now for the LA Kings. So pretty good pickup there, but those are the 3 signings we saw from our past couple of days. Portillo sends a 3-year extension in LA, Askarov sends a 2-year extension in San Jose, and Burns sends a 3-year ELC with the St. Louis Blues. So interesting stuff there. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors. We're going to start here with the New York Islanders. Once again, as we talked about before, more rumors are coming up about the Islanders potentially moving on from a guy like Oliver Wahstrom. Now, Wahstrom was a former 1st-round pick, had really high expectations, but ever since coming to New York, he's not really fitting overly well. He's dealt with some injuries. He's not been able to fit in overly well. I think the best he's gotten is like some options at like the 2nd or 3rd line position. Never really sees the opportunity on those, so he's not worked out overly well in New York, and it seems like a fresh start is most likely what's going to happen for not only him, but it's also best for our team. So Russ Macias of New York Hockey Now does think that there's a very likely chance that the Islanders still move on from him at some point. He still doesn't think that's a very likely option that he'll start the season on the Islanders roster. I mean, waivers are a secondary option. They would most likely want to trade him and at least get something back for him. He identifies the Ducks and the Bruins as potential landing spots for Wahstrom. Now, the Ducks do make sense. They haven't made much movement this offseason. Still a team who could still maybe make some sort of a move to try and improve their forward group or the defensive core. They originally wanted a top 6 forward and a top 4 defenseman. Their biggest adds were Brian Dumoulin and Robbie Fabry, which are decent players, but they're they're not the big upgrades that this team wanted. So could they use another top 9 forward in Wahstrom and give him that sort of an opportunity that is really lacked in New York to try and help him discover his potential? I think it's a possibility. The Ducks would probably have to move like a 3rd or 4th round pick, or maybe a low-end prospect, or maybe a young player who's in a similar position to him, and maybe that works out for both sides. The Islanders get rid of Wahstrom, get something in return, can finally move on from him. The Ducks get a player who might eventually be like a 15 to 20 goal scorer if he can find his form. So that could be a really good pickup there. Bruins, a little bit more interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the Bruins would have to move. They have a couple of decent prospects, especially some B-level ones that I think could intrigue New York. They could move like a lower-end bottom 6 forward. They didn't really replace a guy like Danton Heinen this offseason, so could they get Wahstrom to be sort of like that versatile top 9 guy? It's possible. I mean, Wallstrom's only making $1 million, so it wouldn't be too much against the cap, and I think it could really work well in like a top 9 with the Boston Bruins team, who could definitely use some more depth scoring. So in my opinion, it makes sense that the Ducks and Bruins may be two teams who have some interest, according to Macias, and it definitely does make sense that the Islanders are still looking to move on from Wallstrom after the absolute train wreck of a season he's had over the past couple of years. So in my opinion, it does make sense. I'll have to wait and see if Wallstrom does wind up getting moved. So interesting stuff there. Going over to the Boston Bruins, according to a couple of recent reports I've seen, now I can't guarantee this is 100% certain, but if this is true, this is completely the reason why this hasn't gotten done yet. According to a couple of recent reports I've seen, Jeremy Swayman is looking for $10 million on his new contract. Now that's mind-blowing. I thought he was looking for 8, maybe 8.5. If he's truly looking for $10 million, there's no wonder why this deal hasn't gone through yet. The Bruins have, I think, it's like $6.5–7 million in cap space. If they were to sign to $10 million, they would have to make some sort of move to subtract someone off the roster or send a lot of players down waivers. So it would make a ton of sense as to why some sort of a deal hasn't gone through. Now, why Swayman values himself as a $10 million goaltender is beyond me. He's a good goaltender, don't get me wrong, but I was looking at it. Only 8 players have $6+ million on their AAV. That's Binnington, that's Markstrom, that's Gibson, that's Saros when his extension kicks in next year, that's Sorokin, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, and Bobrovsky. I'm not including Price because he's currently injured and his career is basically ended. So there are currently 8 starting goaltenders who are making $6+ million. Only 8 out of potential 64 goaltenders at the NHL level, only 8 are making over $6 million. So could Swayman be above $6 million? Yes. I think he's better than Binnington. I think at this point in his career he's better than Markstrom. I think he's potentially better than Gibson. I'd put him in the same sort of stratosphere as like a Sorokin or a Saros, so I could see him. That's why I said I thought he would want $8 to $8.5 million. But if you look at the 2 highest paid goaltenders right now, that's Vasilevsky, that's Bobrovsky, making $9.5 to $10.5 million respectively. They're both in Florida teams, which is no tax state teams, so they can make a little bit more. So I'm basically asking for $10 million, if that's true, from the Bruins will basically be asking them to be made the highest paid goaltender at this point in time. So I think that's a little bit of an ask. I think he'd have to lower his price to somewhere at the very least around like $8.5 million. Could he be the 3rd highest goalie in the NHL? I think it's possible, cap-wise at least. I think he's in the sort of Hellebuck, Sorokin range, 8.25 to 8.5, maybe just a slight bit above 8.5, but I think 10's a little bit extreme. So in my opinion, I think Swayman's gonna have to come down the ask, but that makes perfect sense as to why a deal hasn't gone down yet between the Bruins and Swayman. If Swayman's asking for $10 million, the Bruins aren't going to accept that sort of a deal. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what happens there. But Swayman, apparently, according to some reports, once again, can't confirm this or anything, is asking for $10 million. And it'll be interesting to see if the Bruins and Swayman are able to come close on a deal before the training camp starts. Interesting stuff there. Going over to the Vancouver Canucks, now according to a lot of recent reports, especially from Vancouver media, they're currently looking in the goaltending market because there are a lot of questions regarding Thatcher Demko. Now, Demko, as we know, got injured during the first round of last year's playoff series against Nashville Predators, wound up having to be benched. DeSmith wound up being the goaltender, then he got injured, then it was Shilovs who took a net, and then Shilovs ran with their job, looked pretty good. So it's easy to say that Shilovs was a really good goaltender last year, even though they did wind up losing in 7 games to the Oilers, but still, Demko was their starter, and they were planning on going into the season with Demko and Shilovs as their tandem, let DeSmith go to Dallas as a free agent, so they had a lot of confidence that that would be their goaltending tandem, but apparently Demko's still dealing with some injuries. Some people have said it's not a guarantee he will not start the season, but given the fact that there's a lot of rumors out there that they're looking for goaltending help, it would make sense that he might start the season injured, so that could be a huge blow to the Canucks. Now, it sounds like they could be looking for something like a cheap one-year contract who could really help that team just for the short term until Demko's healthy. I've seen some people link a guy who's in free agency like Kevin Lankinen to the Canucks. It seems the Canucks have some major interest in Lankinen. He's a UFA right now. They could probably sign him to like a one-year deal with like $1.5 million AAV. It would work out pretty well for both sides. Lankinen could be a solid third stringer for that team this year. Start as the backup behind Shilovs. Be a good tandem partner until Demko gets back and then maybe be placed on waivers. So I could see that be a potential option there for the Canucks. If you look at the trade market, two teams who I think could definitely help the Canucks out will be Detroit and San Jose. The Canucks have 4 NHL level goaltenders. Campbell's probably going to be placed on waivers, but they have Husso, they have Lyon, they have Talbot. I think they're going to keep Lyon and Talbot as a tandem this year, but I think Husso's fallen out of favor there. If they were to retain 50% of his contract and move him to Vancouver, I think the Canucks might be willing to do that. Same thing with the Sharks. They just acquired Askarov. May want to try and make him a little bit of a path to the NHL at this point in time. Vanecek's in the final year of his deal. I think he could be moved at like half of his contract. That could be a decent move there for the Canucks. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there, but I think a guy like Husso or a guy like Vanecek might be what the Canucks need if they were looking on the trade market, or a guy like Lankinen in free agency. So we'll have to wait and see, but that's saying that the Canucks are interested in trying to make a goalie acquisition due to the fact that they really do want someone like that, with Demko potentially being injured to start the season. So interesting stuff there. Going over to Nashville Predators. I know that Askarov recently just got traded to the San Jose Sharks. That was an interesting deal, but on a recent piece that Elliotte Friedman was doing, he mentioned that there were 4 other teams who had serious interest in Askarov and were also talking to Nashville Predators before the San Jose Sharks wound up acquiring him, and those were the Colorado Avalanche, the Utah franchise, the New Jersey Devils, and the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the trade packages would have looked like. My best guess would have been that it would have to been something like a Stillman, Brennan, and a top 10 protected 2026 first rounder from New Jersey. There was some talk that it was Owen Beck that the Predators wanted from Montreal, so it probably had to been like Beck, Primo, and a 2025 second round pick from Montreal. From Utah, it probably would have had to been Michael Rabel, a young center like a Cole Boudouin, and a top 10 protected 2025 first round pick. And from the Avalanche, it probably would have had to been a top 10 protected 2026 first rounder, a young player like a Richie, and maybe a guy like Justice and Union. That probably would have had to been similar packages to what the Sharks would have had to give up if teams were to make deals with the Predators. Once again, I can't confirm that for sure, but that just, given what the Sharks gave up, those are similar packages in my opinion. So it's interesting to know. I mean, it makes sense for all these teams. The Canadiens are probably not sold on their goaltending. They have Montembeault, they have Primo. Primo's not proven himself at the NHL level, so if they were to move Primo and get Askarov, who should be a starter in the next couple of years, that would have been a major upgrade for the Canadiens. If you look at the Devils, sure, they have Markstrom and Allen right now, and probably would have had to put Askarov in the minors, but in a year's time, you would have been able to be the backup or tandem, with Allen's contract only a year away. In 2 years' time, it could have been the starter, with Markstrom only being under contract for the next 2 seasons. So that could be worked there for the Askarov and the Devils. If you look at the Utah franchise, he probably would have had to start at the AHL level this year, but Vejmelka's in the final year of his deal, so he would have been able to be a backup next year, or potentially even the starter next year with Ingram, a couple of former Predators players, so that could have worked for Utah. If you look at the Avalanche, they have Georgiev, who I think has this year and next year under his contract. They also have Justice and Union, who's not really proven at the NHL level, so if they moved in Union, got Askarov, they would have had the future replacement for Alex Georgiev. So I think all those teams do make some sense. Some of those trades do make sense too, some of them don't, so it would be interesting to note there. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what other team you think would have benefited the most from acquiring Askarov. Would have been Colorado, Utah, New Jersey, or Montreal? Definitely let your guys' thoughts on all of that. And lastly, going over to a couple of free agent rumors. First, when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Elliotte Friedman was also talking about this on his recent 32 Thoughts blog and said that the Leafs are currently in the market looking for a left winger. Now, it's not too surprising there. There's been a lot of recent reports saying that Robertson is still not keen on signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs and wants to be dealt. Not too surprised there. It seemed like he was asking for a trade, so if Robertson still wants to get dealt, he probably won't sign with the Leafs. So could the Leafs move Robertson for a left wing replacement? Could the Leafs move Robertson, use the assets they get for Robertson to maybe go after a left winger? It's possible. There's still a couple decent young players out there like Calle Valiev, Wahstrom, who we just talked about. There's a couple of other players too who could really fit that bill. If you look at the free agent market, a guy like James Van Riemsdyk, who's a former Maple Leaf, could definitely also work in that sort of a situation. Van Riemsdyk going back to Toronto would be quite interesting to see. Another guy would be a guy like Max Pacioretty. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens there. But according to Elliot Friedman, the Leafs are in the market for a left winger, which sort of leads everyone to believe that Robertson probably won't be back with the Leafs next year, and B, could Robertson be moved for that new left winger, or will the left winger come via free agency? We'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to Max Pacioretty. Also last week we heard mentioned by Frank Seravalli that Max Pacioretty is currently drawing interest from a couple of different teams. Now Pacioretty is currently UFA, did all right last year after coming off of his injury that kept him out of action for the past year and a half. He did all right with Washington. Wasn't the same Pacioretty that we're used to seeing, but he did all right as like a solid third line player, and that's probably what he is at this point in his career. After coming off of his injuries, after seeing what he did last year, he's probably a third line player at this point in his career. So he's probably going to get, my guess would be like a 1 year deal at like $1 to $1.5 million AAV. So it's probably not going to be something too expensive, but Frank Seravalli did mention that Pacioretty does have at least interest from 3 teams. So I'm not exactly sure which 3 teams those would be. My guess would be it's probably teams who are looking to try and improve their forward groups or looking to go on cup runs. Some people have also said maybe Pacioretty goes to like a lower end team on a 1 year cheap deal and then gets moved at the deadline. It's possible that happens, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But according to Frank Seravalli, Pacioretty has interest from at least 3 teams, and a deal could be coming for Pacioretty in the not too distant future. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But that's what I'm talking for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What do you think about all of this? Does Pacioretty sign? And if so, what team signs him? Do the Leafs get a left winger? And if so, is it in a trade for Robertson, or is it something else? Do the Canucks acquire a goaltender? And if so, could it be a guy like Lankinen or Husso or Vanacek? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think about the Bruins? Will they sign Swayman for $10+ million, or does Swayman have to come back down a little bit on his deal? What do you think about the New York Islanders? Do they move Wahstrom? And if so, could Anaheim or Boston be a landing spot? And what do you think about the Askarov situation? Would seeing him have gone to Colorado, Utah, New Jersey, or Montreal be interesting? Definitely have to hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below, as well as what we were talking about with the 3 signings. That's all I want to talk about for today. Remember to like this video. If you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you for the support. Renee to all of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below, so I'll discuss in today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So you can check that out. Leave a link down in the description below, and come to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.